From Illinois Soul, this is Dialogue. I'm Reginald Hardwick, News and Public Affairs Director at Illinois Public Media. Saturday mornings at 11 and Tuesdays at 7 p.m., we're bringing you interviews, in-depth stories, and events connected to Black communities in Central Illinois. This week, our entire hour is focused on owning and sustaining your own business. According to the U.S. Census, there are 141,000 Black-owned businesses in Illinois, but only a tiny percentage operate with more than one employee. Recently, I spoke with two experts about what limits the growth of profits and employees at Black-owned businesses. Tricia Teague is a Danville Alderwoman who founded the Trep School. It is a space where entrepreneurs learn how to launch and grow their own businesses. It includes office space and meeting places in case that's something that's not affordable. You'll hear a lot from her and Matthew J. Simpson with the Illinois Office of Minority Empowerment, which conducted a survey about Black businesses. We taped this program before an audience at WILL TV studios last October. And we'll start with Matthew and Tricia talking about why Black businesses sometimes encounter sustainability challenges at the very beginning.
You know, we know how important money is to a business. Money is a major issue. And the research taught us that Black businesses that were capitalized appropriately on a front end tend to earn more revenues over the life of the business. So if you start out with the right amount of money, you're in better position to thrive. The challenge is so many of us aren't able to do that. Research told us 71% of Black businesses leverage their personal finances to start the business, which is not abnormal. Most of us have to dig into our pockets and bet on ourselves. That's what you call owner's equity. You know, you have to use your own money to start the business. The difference comes in owner's equity or personal finances representing your wealth position. If your wealth position as a Black individual on average is about $24,000 in comparison to our white counterparts, which is about $188,000. And you're trying to start a business when $24,000 is everything you have to your name. It's gonna be a different experience. It's gonna be a different struggle for you. So that's the circumstance that we're coming from. We're trying to capitalize appropriately when we have a fraction of the resources to start out with.
I want to piggyback on that. Because years ago when I first relocated back to Danville and had a different business, had the Progressive Black News, and I decided to go get an office, I had some very difficult decisions to make. And so I remember wanting to furnish my office, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to go buy a desk, and I'm going to buy a chair, and I'm going to do all these things. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe not. And so I went and I bought a shell of a desk.
Yeah.
It didn't have any drawers. I didn't buy the drawers. I bought the shell of the desk. And I bought some guest chairs for people to sit at. And then I bought myself a chair. Now, anybody that came into my office knew it looked very professional. But what they did not know is that there was just a shell. There were no drawers. I later added the drawers. And then after that, I took another step and then added the return. And then I added a bigger return. And now I have a whole facility. But I remember what it was like to try to furnish that office, knowing that I had just signed a 3-year lease. Right? So one of the things that happens is you're going into business, your whole wealth is spent investing in this business, and you're spending time and resources, and you're having to juggle and decide, okay, what am I going to invest in? I need to have internet service. I need to have a desk. I need to have these things. I need to have a computer. But I also need to have some marketing.
Come on now.
And I also need to have, a phone, and I also need to have a website, and I have a lot of different things, and who's on first? And so it's one of the things that I had in mind when I created my space. We provide the desks. We provide the chairs. You just show up with a computer.
Yeah.
All you got to do is just show up and work and do your best work so you can focus on growing.
Yes.
Because if you spend all of your time and resources on all these operational expenses, you won't have a business eventually.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one of the things that came out of the survey too is some of the environmental challenges related to operating a business. One of them was this notion of a stalled or stagnant business environment. And part of that, so, there's these aspirations to get into a brick and mortar in a stalled and stagnant business environment. We have to really be focused on the right things. We can't put the cart before the horse. Mm-hmm. So sometimes, we have a vision for business and we want it to look a certain way. And because what we understand it to be is about that aesthetic. You need to have a sign in the window. You need to have a desk with some drawers on it, But what we need most importantly is customers. If you don't have customers, you don't have a business. You have a hobby. And ain't nothing wrong with having a hobby. That's cool. But if we're talking about business, it's not as important, especially nowadays. All of us have computers in our pocket. It's not as important nowadays to jump out into a brick and mortar. There's a way to scale. And we really want our business community to understand that the business environment isn't always stagnant so much as it is, it's dynamic and digital. So the new challenge is chasing down that customer when they don't even have to leave the house to shop, and creating experiences. Those are the things that, the survey is intended to do, shine a light on data and empower leaders to make informed decisions.
Tricia, what is the difference between hustling and owning a business out and out?
Hustling, to me, is just about chasing dollars. And there are a lot of people who go into business expecting for it to be this panacea, this gold rush, this whatever you want to call it. Oh, I'm just going to make all this money. And what happens is they go in, they think it's going to be all these great things. They don't anticipate any obstacles or hurdles, and obstacles and hurdles happen all the time, every day. And then it doesn't work out, and then they get out of that business, and then they jump into another 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 business, and it just keeps snowballing because they didn't focus or be consistent at anything. Focusing on business is not just about chasing dollars. It's also about making sure that your operations are in order, about having your taxes in order, having your EIN, exercising good corporate hygiene.
Yes.
So when you are a business owner, you have to be mindful of everything. I have to be mindful of my hiring practices and whether or not I do something illegal or not, and the conversations that my employees might have at work. I have to be mindful of all of the things and not just chasing the almighty dollar. And sometimes in our community especially, we have a lot of people who have hustle mentality and they don't have enough business mentality. And one of the things that we do is we try to help them channel that hustle mentality. Because the truth of the matter is, it takes hustle mentality to make money in business.
Well,
it can't be discounted.
Yes.
People who have hustle mentality will always have money, but their business will hit a plateau. They will hit a ceiling and they won't be able to go beyond it. When you apply business to hustle, now you can expand and grow and create a network and franchise and do a number of things. And so it's something that we have to, in our community especially, I think, cultivate, is the business mentality, understanding what it means to really be in business. I remember having a conversation with someone in my first cohort, and this person asked me what I needed. And I was like, yeah, I need help. I'm about to hire somebody. And he said, oh, well, I know somebody, and they work at such and such, and they can help you in the evenings. I'm like, no. I need to hire someone. He's like, oh, you doing business for real? Yes. I'm doing business for real. Yeah. I want to hire a 40-hour-a-week employee. I'm going to pay taxes on this employee.
Yes, indeed.
Like, I'm going to do all of the things. And when you have business mentality, you're always looking at ways in which you do things the right way.
Mm-hmm. We have this thing that we've said amongst each other: paperwork makes the paperwork. You know what I mean? Formalizing your business. Paperwork makes the paper work. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about those taxes, you know, you can't be running from that. You know, you have to file your taxes. It's just a fact, because that's how you demonstrate that there's money coming and going. You have to be able to account for the dollars that you make and the dollars that you spend. It's the nature of the beast. And when you are formalizing, you out of the shadows, you can really stand up on 2 feet and fight for yourself instead of sneaking and hiding and trying to pinch money and tuck it away. So that's how you become a truly independent institution. You know, I think our community is stronger when we have more independent institutions. A business is one of those institutions that we need. But when you hiding your money and you acting like you're not there,
Paying under the table.
You know, paperwork makes the paperwork. Don't be afraid of it. You know, stand up in that light and you're going to shine bright.
Matthew J. Simpson with the Illinois Office of Minority Empowerment talked about opportunities for growth resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic.
So it's millions of dollars, you know, emergency funding during the global health pandemic. Millions of dollars flowed from the federal government to the state. There were a number of programs that were stood up to connect businesses that were in need of emergency funding to dollars. All you needed to do was demonstrate you had at least 3 years of taxes, your employee identification number, bank accounts. You had to show that you suffered a loss due to the pandemic. Very simple. And, you know, we still getting calls, people looking for grants. You know, a lot of that money is gone. But if you're ready, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And you're absolutely right. I think that was a really big lesson for our businesses. You got to iron them wrinkles out now. You know, preparation meets opportunity, and then you win. Mm-hmm. We don't want to wait for those moments. We got to be ready for it when they come.
Tricia Teague, founder of the Trep School, a business incubator in Danville, talked about how the place that she founded is dedicated to growing small businesses.
One of the wonderful things that we have right now is a program called the Trep on Track Business Boot Camp. And all of our participants do not have to pay. We offer it for free because it is funded by the state. And so what we do is we have an interview and intake process where I talk to them about what their business idea is, what research they've done, if they've already been in business, how long they've been in business, what their goals are. And then they'll come into the program. And so the way that the program operates is we have 2 courses. We have an introductory course I call Trep Prep. And what Trep Prep does is it helps them to vet their business, because it kind of goes back to the exercise you all did with the survey, which is we gonna get data, and not just I think this is a good idea because Pookie and them told me it was, or I told myself it was. And so they're required to go out and talk to potential customers to understand what problem their business solves and understand what their customers' needs and pain point is, so that they know they actually would have customers once they move forward in this business. So that's a 9-week course. And then we have the advanced course, which is called Fast Track. It's a 13-week course. And if Trep Prep is about vetting the business or vetting the idea, Fast Track is about turning that idea into a viable business. So it's going to help you with your business plan and your business model and your financial forecast and your pitch. And we also provide them with one-on-one coaching. So I actually give one-on-one sessions to every single person in the program. They get 12 sessions. And so we talk about their goals. We talk about their ideas. We also talk about fears, uncertainties, and doubts, because the truth of the matter is your business cannot grow beyond your personal capacity. And if you don't fix what's going on up here in your head or what's going on in your heart, you're not going to move forward. And so I work with them, just depends on what it is that they want to talk about and deal with. We work on those things. And then the last piece is we offer cash. So we give all of our graduates $3,000, up to $3,000 to use in their business. So they use those dollars to purchase goods and services. There are more Black women starting businesses than any other segment of society.
But there are challenges to entrepreneurship unique to this demographic. We'll empower you with information coming up.
Whatever comes, I'm going to deal with it. I don't know how I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to lean on my faith. I'm going to be resilient, and I'm going to keep moving.
Later, learn why being flexible is a key to survival in business. Our dialogue about starting and sustaining a business continues after this. You're listening to Dialogue from Illinois Soul. I'm Reginald Hardwick. And throughout this special hour, we're talking about starting or sustaining your own business. In October, I talked with two experts, Matthew J. Simpson with the State Office of Minority Empowerment, and Tricia Teague, founder of the Trep School, a business incubator in Danville. In this segment, we start with how prevalent Black women-owned businesses are in Illinois and whether they have enough support.
Well, I believe data shows that Black women businesses are the fastest growing segment of businesses, as there are more Black women starting businesses than any other segment of society. There's support out there. Is there enough? Probably not. I don't think there ever will. As a Black woman, I don't think that there ever will be. I think we face a number of challenges that others don't face. You know, it can be extremely daunting and frustrating to walk in a room and not be taken seriously or be the only person that looks like you sitting there. So I think there's always more that can be done to support Black women in their business ventures.
So we put this survey out to Black businesses statewide. 64% of respondents were women, and that's in line with the metric that she just referenced. The fastest growing business segment is Black women. And the challenge is the highest failure rate is also Black women. Mm-hmm. So what we need to do is work to mitigate that. Since we see where the activity is, we need to do something unique to address it, because we don't want that to go away. Many of the Black women were also managing familial obligations in ways that men didn't have to. The funds from the business constituted more of their main income as the Black women. Those were the two principal things. So it's not that, when we talk about the failure rate, it's not that male-owned businesses are better. It's that female-owned businesses are more constrained. And we have to do more to address those constraints to make sure they can fly.
And I imagine, and I don't know if your survey touched on this or not, that if the starting point is $24,000 for the average Black household, that the starting point is even less if it's a single woman, single mother household, because we know that, let's say, for example, a Black man and a Black woman both have worked, maybe in corporate America or maybe not, and then decided go into business. We know that Black women statistically bring in less income than Black men. So that means that wealth piece that they started with is probably not even 24.
Right.
It might be half of that. Let's say 12 to 18. So you have even less to start with and try to build off of.
There are grant programs to help bolster entrepreneurs, but Matthew and Tricia offered perspectives on how they can help or harm a small business.
If you're talking about funding, there's something that we have called a OME grant, OMEE. Our office is called the Office of Minority Economic Empowerment. So the OME grant, there will be funds specifically for buying property or renovating property. That's a grant. So you're talking about $50,000, that's not an issue. Talking about matching, that's not an issue. So that's the OMI grant. Now, I just got to be candid. We should kind of broaden our scope when we're looking for dollars to start a business above and beyond grants. It's like chasing a unicorn. The most important money that's going to come through your business is going to come from customers because of your solving a problem. So that's what we need to be chasing. Chase the customer who you can solve their problem. We never raise our nose at a grant. I mean, if something come up, we work out, that's all good. But we're in the business of solving problems for people. And to a greater degree to which we can do that, we can grow our business.
Can I add to what you just said? Since we've given out a little bit of advice, if we're going to go after grants, make sure you use it in a way that's going to help you scale your business. Because if you're just using these grant dollars to just pay your rent or, whatever, then you're going to be in the same boat, in the same position in just a few months. But if you use grant dollars, and I'm not against applying for grants. I've applied for a few grants, and I've used them. But every single one that I've applied for helped me do something that I could not do before I got the grant that we're still doing now. So, for example, as a result of going to the Online with OMI sessions, I became aware of a grant with the U.S. Hispanic Chamber and AARP. I am not Hispanic. I'm not eligible for AARP either. But they had a grant that if you hired someone who was 50 or above, if you had someone who was 50 or above, and you sent them to a training, and the training was going to result in their promotion and a pay increase, that you could apply for this grant. I became aware of it at a session that OMI does, and it was with Matt, and we applied. I had an employee who I decided I wanted her to become our community manager. I sent her to community manager training. She completed that. She got promoted. She's community manager now. And that put us in a position so that when we opened the incubator space, she can apply community manager skills and things that she learned in the space.
Awesome.
So that helped us grow the business.
So I will add, I mentioned the OMI grant, and Sister Teague just shined a light on it. Every month, our office hosts a webinar called Online with OMI. The only thing we talk about is money. The only thing we talk about, federal, state, local, private money. Online with OMI every month out of the Illinois Office of Minority Economic Empowerment. It's a webinar, it's a virtual platform, so that's something we do. It's for the minority business community across the state.
One question that we received is, what are the current resources for Black-owned businesses, startup funding, business credit, successful bookkeeping? Do we have a directory?
Online, we have this thing called the Business Resource Library. On the Illinois Office of Minority Economic Empowerment's webpage is the Business Resource Library. It's a collection of brief videos that cover the foundational topics that are needed to help start up a business, like marketing. How do you identify your customer and go pursue that customer? The 5 keys to formalizing your business. How and why it's important to file your taxes. In pursuing this idea of becoming a minority-owned certified business or woman-owned certified business, and then how to go after grants. These are really foundational videos. We got the slides up as well, 30 minutes at a time. You can do it while you're washing your dishes, doing laundry. These are one of the really entry-level resources we intend to provide to entrepreneurs, because so much of the gap is in that knowledge base and that understanding base. So that's the knowledge piece. I do want to mention a loan program that we have called Advantage Illinois. It's what we call a participation loan. And for Black businesses, you can lock in to a 2% interest rate on the state's portion of the debt. Now, that's significant. Now, it's a blended rate, so you get half of your project market rate, half of it will be locked in at 2%. So it's called Advantage Illinois. Something that you want to consider as a startup business, because we do extend those dollars to startups as well.
Another question, I really love this. What was the hardest time on your business and how did you handle it?
Last year, the state owed my business over $100,000. And
they had nothing to do with me.
We continued to move on. I didn't have to furlough, thank God for that. And I also called on resources. I didn't take it just lying down. I was making phone calls. I was calling my state rep and state senator like, hey, can you make a phone call?
That's good.
Because I needed them to know what was going on and I needed them to work on my behalf. So that probably was the hardest time financially, because you don't know when the issue's going to get resolved. So, I had to be a little bit of a bulldog in that situation. I think one of the things that you have to keep in mind is that doesn't kill you will only make you stronger. It wasn't the first time the state owed us money. It won't be the last as long as we keep doing business with the state. And so I know that I think what it really boils down to is the whole mindset piece, and knowing that whatever comes, I'm going to deal with it. I don't know how I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to lean on my faith. I'm going to be resilient, and I'm going to keep moving. And that's what I think that's the difference between entrepreneurial mindset and business owner, entrepreneurial mindset and hustler. Because if I'm focused on the long range, a long-term goal, my vision, my mission, all of these things is going to work out.
If I could just add to that, I love what you said about if it doesn't kill me, it makes me stronger, and that resilience, which is part of our culture. And there's sometimes, the notion of self-care right now is very, very, I don't want to say trendy, but it's great to me that it's been elevated to a more visible platform. We need to learn how to take care of ourselves, unplug, in whatever way that you like to. Sometimes you want to cook yourself a meal. Sometimes you want to take yourself a nice bath, light some candles. But other times, you're going to have to ball your fists up and be resilient. Because in some instances, there's not enough candles that you can light. You're going to have to stand up and fight back. And that's what you did. You said, I didn't take it lying down. You advocated for yourself. That's what we have to do. We have to be our own advocate. That's part of that resilience. And you just have to know that you can do it. You can do it.
How important is having a support system, and do you encourage people really, more than just saying, I have my friends and I just want to vent, but really having a support system that you can really count on?
It's huge. Every entrepreneur needs a support system. I'm a person who believes in, obviously I'm a coach, so I coach other entrepreneurs, so of course I support them, but I also have a coach. I have blind spots. I have things I need to talk through with someone else. Now, I'm easy to coach because I'm a coach, so I'll do stuff. I'm like, before you give me homework, this is what I'm going to do next time. It's important to be able to have a circle of like-minded individuals and people that you deal with. And the truth of the matter is, we as entrepreneurs do crazy things. Entrepreneurship is crazy. It's not for the faint at heart.
Come on now.
And you got to be able to find other people who are like you, who are like-minded, who's not going to poo-poo on your idea or look at you like you lost your mind and say, yeah, you know what? I think that can work. And you know what else I think you can do? You can do this, this, and this too. You want people who are going to add to you.
Yes.
And when your circle is other entrepreneurs, that's what happens. That iron sharpens iron. Yeah. Those people add to you. They make you better. And so that's one of the reasons why I do what I do, because the truth of the matter is I wanted to be around people just like me.
We asked Black businesses, where do you turn for support? Where do you turn for additional support when you need it in your business? There was a list of options for people to choose from. The top two selections, number one was my immediate network, friends, mentors, or industry connections. Number two was my gut. My immediate network, the people who I already know, and if I can't reach them, my gut. So, when we talk about having people in your circle who are like-minded like you, who can push you, who maybe can help you find some money, who can help you connect to a contract opportunity, introduce you to a new client. That's social capital. And a lot of times that's going to be outside of people we already know in our phone. And it's going to be bigger than our gut. So that social capital piece is important. This is what Tricia's saying. You have to surround yourself with people who can sharpen you, who can push you. And sometimes it's hard to do when we feel like we're trying to fight to make a difference. We're in the business by ourselves. We feel excluded. It can be scary and daunting, but we have to do that. We have to grow our network, because that's how you grow your net worth. You have to grow that social capital.
As we ended our dialogue with Tricia Teague of the Trep School in Danville and Matthew J. Simpson with the Illinois Office of Minority Empowerment, they both reminded us that Black businesses are a solution to community issues, but you have to be personally ready to take on a challenge like entrepreneurship.
Black businesses are not the problem. Black businesses are the solution. And what I mean is, we can talk about statistics, we can talk about failure rates, we can talk about the scale being less than $50,000, being solopreneurs, focused on certain industries, as if that's a limiting description. But what's also true is that we're the fastest growing business segment in Black women. We motivated to solve problems by way of our product or service. That's Black business.
Become the expert in your own industry. Become an expert in your own business. Speak life over yourself and over the things that you think are your shortcomings, and make them work for you. Retrain your mind on everything, so that you could continue to move forward and push yourself forward, because your business will only grow to the level of your personal capacity. Any issue that you have in your personal life is going to show up in your business. It's going to show up in spades, and it will take your business down. So take the time and opportunity to figure out how to fix those things so that you can succeed despite yourself.
You can find links to Matthew J. Simpson with the Illinois Office of Minority Empowerment and Tricia Teague of the Trep School at illinoissoul.org. Not ready to leave your 9-to-5 for your own business? Next, some advice on making a side hustle pay off when Dialogue from Illinois Soul returns. Welcome back to Dialogue from Illinois Soul. I'm Reginald Hardwick, News and Public Affairs Director at Illinois Public Media. In this special, we're having a dialogue the entire hour about owning your own business. Some people aren't ready to leave their jobs entirely, but they have an idea that they can manage on the side. How can you make that profitable? Let's turn to our friends at NPR's Life Kit.
The first takeaway to starting a side gig is to be honest about why you want to do this in the first place and how much effort it's going to take. Take it from me. I'm a journalist, but when I decided to start selling illustrations on the side, I had to ask myself, why? Do I want to be able to pay off a bill from the money I make? Do I want to break into a new field and have a portfolio of work to show? Or is this all for fun and to get better at something that I love doing? There is no right or wrong answer, but mulling this over will help you figure out if starting a side gig is worth it for you. Asking yourself why will help you define success on your own terms. It's also going to help you create healthy boundaries in your life. Because guess what? Working for yourself is probably going to cost you a lot of time and money, especially when you first start out. So here's Ty, lawyer by day and DIY auntie by night.
Moments when I usually would, after I log off from work, would be sitting here watching TV. I'm sitting here watching TV and sewing. I'm sitting here watching TV and cutting. So you have to steal the hours from comfort.
Having a side gig can sound like living the dream, but it doesn't always feel that way. Our friends at Code Switch wrote a great piece about the ugly culture associated with a side hustle and how a gig can quickly turn into a grind. You can find a link to it on our website. But this episode is not about working yourself to death to keep up with the capitalist machine. It's about providing tips to treat yourself fairly if you do decide to work for yourself. So that said, after you ask yourself why and factor in how having a side gig will shake up your schedule, it's time for takeaway number 2. Research your market. When Ty was just sewing for fun, her niece was her only client. But now she had to market her toys to everyone. And it wasn't enough to just put her alphabet and number sets on Etsy and hope for the best. Ty needed to get a sense for how her products went from her hands to her customers.
As a buyer of Etsy, you can go in and search for anything and something will pop up. And so for me, I started searching for exactly what I wanted to put out there to kind of see what people were doing already and how people were doing it. And so I spent a lot of time reading through people's shops. Like, how did they describe what they were doing? And also, what was their production timeline? Like, if you ordered something, how long would it take them to get it out to you? You know, kind of taking note of all of these things and what kind of things did they post on Instagram? How did they post on Instagram? What did they describe their products as?
Like a lot of people, Ty was already on Instagram. But figuring out how to represent her business there was enough of a stretch that she decided to study up.
There was a webinar about starting a business and also, you know, having a social media presence. And I remember one of the first things that they said in the webinar was, don't worry so much about having the perfect post and kind of having everything perfect from day one. And I think I internalized that.
Now, Ty's been working at this side gig for less than a year. She's still in the early stages of her business where she's trying out new things and still experimenting. We wanted to know what lessons you pick up if you've been at this for a little longer. So we talked to Lindsay Adams. From 9 to 5, Lindsay's a marketing and communications strategist. But she's also been a freelance fine artist for years. It's her 5 to 9, as she likes to call it. Lindsay also lives with cerebral palsy and is a disability advocate.
I've been kind of drawing and painting most of my life. I had never really thought of doing it full time, you know, but I knew that it was very much a big part of my life, and a way for me to express like all the nuances that make Lindsay, whether that be my challenges with cerebral palsy or, you know, being a Black woman. It's always been my way of kind of giving back to myself, but also sharing of myself with others.
For Lindsay, working as a fine artist was less about making a little side money and more of a conscious decision to grow the part of her that's an artist.
I needed to find a way to really kind of tap into this creativity that I've had my whole life. So I'm just not drowning in the corporate space.
When you're just starting to make money off a hobby, you have to be all things at once. You're the product manager, the research and development department, the marketing associate, the communications director. You handle quality control, shipping and handling, customer service. But Lindsay says that when you've been working on a side hustle for a while and know what your strengths and weaknesses are as an entrepreneur, you don't have to do it all.
If you have the means, it's okay to outsource. You know, there are people who are masters at this, you know, who do it full time. They live and breathe it. If you're creating the copy for your website, like, someone else might be able to write about your work and market it in a way that you don't necessarily see because you're so close to the product.
As she progressed as an artist, Lindsay identified that she needed an assistant to keep up with email, so she hired one. This may not be the move for someone who's just starting out, but it's nice to know that if things become busy enough, you may not have to do it all yourself. The part that's hard for both Lindsay and Ty, pricing products and managing money. I asked Lindsay about this, and even though she's been creating and selling fine art for years, she assures me it's still tricky.
Pricing is, if it's not harder than the technical skill of art, it is right up there at a close second.
Her advice, don't get intimidated.
You have to price it in a way that you take yourself and your time seriously. That way others will as well. If you're spending 15 to 20 hours on a project, how much do you kind of want to take home? And then looking at cost of materials, you know, cost of having to have your website, cost of marketing, and then time.
Of course, pricing your time fairly is going to vary depending on what you're doing with your time. For Ty, it was easy to price her materials because she bought them herself, but pricing her time was a different story.
My side hustle is very manual labor intensive. I'm creating something with my hands. And I think figuring out the cost of my labor and how much I would need to charge in order to, I guess, appropriately compensate myself for that labor is so much more difficult. I have people on one side saying, you're charging too much, people on the other side saying you're charging too little. So, I kind of had to be my own financial advisor and accountant in that regard to kind of figure out, okay, how do I strike the balance of, appropriately compensating myself, but also charging people a fair price.
So whether you're making kids' toys, painting someone's portrait, teaching piano, tutoring math, or selling homemade jewelry, pricing is weird and super awkward. But there's got to be a way to think about it that doesn't make you feel uncomfortable. So I called up my friend Phil Zellner. He's a designer by trade, but his side gig is being a financial coach. He says there's a reason pricing is difficult.
It's more like you're solving a riddle than applying a formula.
Phil says pricing can differ depending on whether you're making a product versus offering a service.
For folks who are creative makers, they're going to be able to find similar products and use that as a baseline for what to charge. They're also going to know kind of like, the costs associated with making the product, so they'll be able to factor that in. It's a little bit of an easier path for them. But when it comes to creative doers, people like illustrators, designers, copywriters, then there are a ton of factors in play, everything from your experience level to how big the client you're working with is to how complicated this particular project happens to be. So over time, it just becomes more intuitive and you get a feel for how to price in different scenarios.
When it comes to figuring out how you should value your time, Phil says to start out with how much money you want to make, think about what's fair for you and fair to the client, and then work backwards.
So if you wanted to make, say, $65,000 a year as a copywriter, then what you can do is you can take that number and you can divide it by 2,080, which is the number of billable hours in a year, and you'll get to an hourly rate, which in that case would be like $31.25. If you were doing this in practice, you would want to factor in some other things like whether there are expenses related to the projects that you're doing, non-billable time, vacation, that sort of thing, and self-employment taxes. But it does get you kind of an area to start with.
I think that's really great advice. But what if you're having a hard time figuring out what number to start with? That brings us to our third takeaway.
Don't be afraid to make money.
That's right. Don't be afraid to make money. That's part of the reason why you're doing this, right?
As creatives, we tend to be like really passionate about what we do. And we don't want to lose the opportunity to do that work. And I think because we enjoy what we do so much, we tend to think that we shouldn't be, well compensated for it. Doing something you're passionate about and making money doing it, those are not mutually exclusive.
Okay, so say you're actually starting to make money. That's amazing. How do you keep track of it? I asked Lindsay, our freelance fine artist, how she handles accounting. She says there's a phrase graphic design folks say when they're talking about backing up their digital files: save early and save often. Lindsay says you should apply the same thinking to bookkeeping. Save your receipts and keep track of all the paperwork that comes with your business. That's our fourth takeaway. Track your finances and track them often.
So you don't have to go back at the end of each quarter or at the end of each fiscal year to find all those receipts. I think kind of setting up a framework in the beginning, no matter if you're small, big, or large, of like tracking, this is what I did on this day, this is how much it cost, is a lot easier than having to scramble in December to, what did I do in February?
Financial coach Phil says, yes, you can absolutely manage your books yourself, but don't go rogue with the way you organize your numbers. Coming up with your own little system might actually make things harder for you in the long run. So find a basic template and stick to it. And don't be afraid to bring in a little help if you need it.
It can be a worthwhile investment up front to bring in a bookkeeper just to help you get a system in place. That way you're doing things in a standardized way. But once you have the system in place, you can take over a lot of the legwork yourself. It's, a lot of it isn't rocket science. But then you'll always have a relationship with a bookkeeper, and you can fall back on them if something more complicated pops up, like you need to start running payroll or something like that.
Even if you don't decide to hire a bookkeeper or an accountant, that's okay. Here's a tip from Phil. Separate your business finances from your personal finances.
I would suggest to anybody who is going to start monetizing their side hustle that you should, first thing, get a business checking account and a business credit card, and make sure you run all of your deposits and purchases through those accounts. It's going to make things a lot cleaner when it comes to bookkeeping. You're going to have these accounts that everything in there is to do with your business, which will just make tracking a lot easier.
Don't just open up an account with any bank. Look around for one with fewer predatory practices.
When you look for business accounts, you need to shop around, and you need to look for a bank that offers a business account that's going to have a low minimum balance that you maintain in order to avoid a monthly fee. Take some time to look around at what different people have to offer. And particularly look to credit unions and local banks, because they often really help out small businesses because they're trying to support their community.
As challenging as it might feel, keeping track of money is one of the most important things about starting a side gig. Because the moment you start making money is one of the moments things will start to feel real to you and the federal government. That's right, we're talking about taxes. So here's our fifth takeaway. Be ready to pay up.
As soon as you start monetizing a hobby, you need to think of it like a business, because the IRS will think of it like a business. So as soon as you start making money, then you're going to, by default, become a sole proprietor, or if you're working with somebody else, you would become a partner. So at that point, you have a business entity. You don't need to fill out any paperwork for it or whatever. The IRS just knows that you made money, and therefore you have a small business. And now you're going to be filling out a Schedule C, and that's going to flow onto your personal tax return so that income can be taxed. It may feel like I have this hobby and I just make a few $1,000s, but from the standpoint of the IRS, you're making money that needs to be taxed.
So a Schedule C is a form that you attach to your 1040. It basically sums up what you've made as a small business owner and calculates what taxes you owe from that. It's like the W-2 that you get from your employer, but instead of them filling it out for you and sending it to you, you fill it out for yourself because you're your own boss.
That's it for this week's Dialogue. Tell us what you think about our show by giving us a call at 217-244-1989. Did this information help you think about starting your own business? Let us know at 217-244-1989. Our music theme was produced by Lamont Holden. I'm Reginald Hardwick. Dialogue and Illinois Soul are brought to you by Illinois Public Media, which is a service of the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. We'll dialogue with you again next week.